This evening, District 3 candidates for South Phoenix and South Glendale, Jeff Zink and Yasmin Ansari, join us. Jeff Zink says more and more Latinos in the district are leaving the Democratic Party, a group he believes he is the better candidate to serve. Yasmin Ansari narrowly won the district Democratic primary by just 36 votes. She joins us to talk about why voters should keep the district blue and elect her this November. This is Before You Vote. Welcome, I'm Mike Broomhead. We're less than a month away from the November election, and in that time, we will continue to cover as many of the issues, candidates, and propositions on the ballot as we can. Now, before we sit down with today's guest, I want to start off with the latest. Now, the news is both local and national. Let's start with the national news. Hurricane Milton made its way across Florida, and I first of all want to thank many of you for reaching out to me, knowing that I grew up in Southwest Florida. My family is fine. We sustained minimal damage in the town of Fort Myers, where I grew up. Although the coastline, the beaches, Fort Myers Beach, Sanibel, and Captiva Island had storm surge and flooding. Tornadoes on the front end. There was some damage, people without power. But Southwest Florida survived and did much better in this hurricane than they did during Ian 2 years ago. And we are certainly still praying for the people at Siesta Key near Sarasota and across the state of Florida. That hurricane kind of ravaged and did a lot of damage. There's still a lot of people without power and people that are going to need help recovering. So thank you for your thoughts and prayers, and thank you for reaching out about that hurricane. Fortunately for my family, minimal damage, and we're going to be moving on nicely. The other story is the Senate debate. I want to talk about the debate between Kari Lake and Ruben Gallego for a moment from a perspective of what we learned. If there are undecided voters, and there are, how many of them learned what they needed to decide on one candidate or the other? I think this debate largely satisfied the base of both candidates. That was kind of snarky, it was a bit contentious, and I think both sides liked seeing their candidate go after the other. But I don't know how much substance was decided in this. I will tell you there were a couple of moments. I saw a little bit more from Ruben Gallego on what he thinks about the border issue and some of his solutions. Whether I agree with him or I don't, I did learn a little bit from him. And from Kari Lake when she talked about no taxes on tips and no taxes on Social Security and echoing some of the Trump policies and why, I learned a little about her. But for the most part, I think this was, what we learned was, it kind of concluded for us, the two candidates don't like each other much. And I don't know that that was going to convince the undecided voters. I think that was where the problem lies with this, that the undecided voters didn't really get much out of this debate where they needed to learn more. And so we'll see moving forward. I could be wrong. This could move the needle for one candidate or the other. But last night what I saw was a little bit more contention than there was anything else. So that's kind of my wrap on all of this. It was an interesting thing to watch, but I don't know how much the undecided voters really learned about all of this. Just my take on the whole thing. Stay with us. We hear from Republican candidate for CD3, Jeff Zink, next. See why he thinks voters in South Phoenix, downtown, and South Glendale areas should vote for him in November. We'll be back here in exactly 60 seconds. All right, welcome back to Before You Vote. Now that we're primed for the general election, we're going to start talking to candidates in these races. CD3, Congressional District 3, Jeff Zink, the Republican candidate. Thanks for doing this.
Well, thank you for having me here.
Let's talk, there are districts in Arizona that are considered red or blue, and you're in one that's been considered blue for a long time. Mm-hmm. What is the pathway to winning an election there, which has been, like you said, we've been saying, a standard blue district?
Mm-hmm. One of the things that is exciting about this district now are the failed blue policies that have been put in place for so many years. We've had a Democrat that's been in that seat for 24 years. We had Raul Grijalva, Ed Pastor, and now Ruben Gallego. All three have really not done as much for that South Mountain and CD3 area. So the thing is that we have a lot of Democrats that are now jumping ship. We have, and the makeup is 64% Latino. and 68% of the Latino population is leaving the Democratic Party. They may not be coming to the Republican Party, they may be independent, but they are definitely not in line with the policies of the Democratic Party. So it's actually changing now.
So let's talk about the issues then. What are the biggest issues in that district? Because you're representing a group of people. What are they telling you are the issues that are most important to them?
The number one thing that they're concerned with is the southern border, that the people that are coming over, they're doing it illegal. The thing is that most of my constituents, when I'm talking to them, they are literally stating that we came to this country, we left a country that had socialist ideas. We're now seeing those socialist ideas starting to form now in this country. We have nowhere to go. And the fact is that the people are coming over illegal. That is taking jobs away from them. It's jamming up the medical centers and stuff, because we have people in medicine, in the ERs, that people are being triaged and taken care of there. So it's really tough on them, and so that's their number one. The second one literally is the inflation. It's the economy. The fact that they have to pay $3 to $4 a gallon of gas. They're now having to pay $5 eggs, and so the thing is that everything that we have is now translating into more and more inflation, and they have more month than money. Those are the two biggest issues that they have. The third one would be actually not having any type of manufacturing where they can go to work and work for 8 to 10 hours and have benefits. Right now, when they raised the rate from $7.50 to $8, I think is when it went to 15. What ended up happening is that all of the employers ended up then firing everybody pretty much, because they can't afford paying everyone $15 minimum and carrying the benefits. So now everybody gets part-time jobs. And so instead of working an 8-hour, 10-hour job, they're working 12 to 16 hours because it's 3 part-time jobs. Those are the 3 main issues that are in my district that I get talked about every day.
I have time for one more question. I want to address the border with you.
Okay.
One of the biggest complaints I've had and others is that Congress has not been able to come together on the issue of border security and immigration to put something together and might write reasonable legislation. How do you make that happen if you're elected?
Okay, so it's very easy. We have 1.16 million DACA people. They pay $500 to $600 a year just to stay in this country. We take that money, that equates to $600 million to $500 million. We finish and complete the wall. We also subsidize more Border Patrol and ICE. We take this money, we're not taxing anybody at all, but we're using money there. And then we create a pathway to citizenship for those that do it legally. And in 5 years, they're legal citizens. And as they do that, it comes off. And so what we do is we've already used those 5 years with that money that was not taxed from any of our people. We put it, we build the wall, we have the people in place, and we're a lot more secure for doing it.
Well, Jeff, it's been interesting to meet you. We've never met before. I wish you the best in your campaign, and I look forward to talking to you again.
I appreciate it, and thank you for having me.
All right, his name is Jeff Zink, Republican candidate in CD3. We'll be back. Don't go anywhere. Do Arizona voters think Arizona is heading in the right direction? Mike Noble with Noble Predictive Insights joins us to break down the latest opinions held by Republicans, Democrats, and independent voters. This is Before You Vote. All right, welcome back. It's time for our Tracking Arizona segment. So that, of course, means Mike Noble, Noble Predictive Insights. Let's jump right into this. Oh, yeah. Public sentiment, right direction, wrong direction, has changed dramatically since COVID. Let's take a look at this. Can you give me some explanations as to why?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So Arizona is overall very optimistic about the way things are going in Arizona, but then COVID spike happened, and that's where things kind of went upside down. They become very pessimistic, and that really hasn't changed too much since we've been tracking it over the years. And I think a lot of it has to do with some of the intake that we've had to Arizona. So once COVID happened, you had people kind of ideologically sorting. You had people from the Midwest or Eastern West Coast migrating to different states that maybe they agreed with more so or not. So what you see in the numbers is that Democrats are really happy with the direction of the state right now because it's become a little bluer, right, from before. But then Republicans, they're definitely the most pessimistic group, with independents slightly on the Republican side.
But I know this isn't just the economy, but the Arizona economy has remained very strong. We've got the investment with TSMC. You've got the massive investment with Intel. We've seen jobs and everything kind of go, property values going up, and yet we still see this pessimism.
Correct. I think that there's part of that. And also what happened is that, housing values are starting to kind of skyrocket a bit. Remember, a lot of people, why they moved to the South.
So it's affordability?
I would say affordability, actually, because the Southwest region, everyone kind of moves here because of low cost of living. And so with housing values going up, interest rates going up, inflation going up, I mean, they've been hammered on the pocketbook. And so, and you can kind of see that in the issues.
So when you look at the next one, and when you look at this, like you were talking about in the pessimism, optimism, what do you see here with the independents?
Well, the independents, they're aligning closer to Republicans and Democrats. But what we see there is that a lot of that's driven by what issues they're most interested about. And housing affordability and inflation are right up there. Inflation is actually number one.
Well, so that's a great segue, because let's take a look now at those issues. Let's take a look at the top issues for people. If you look at this, if you look at Republicans, immigration, inflation, you look at independents, inflation, immigration, it's flipped. With Democrats, it's abortion, the number one issue. What are you seeing with these top issues by party?
Yeah, so the top issues by party is fascinating, is that Republicans, their number one issue is actually their base issue or a social issue, which is immigration or border security. Yet Democrats, on the other hand, abortion is their number one, which is their social issue. And then you look at, okay, what about the tiebreaker, the independents? What do they care about? Inflation is actually their number one, so their pocketbook. Immigration, number two, but affordable housing. So when you really look at, like, let's say the top three issues right now, it's one's a social issue, but two are pocketbook issues. But where are they ranking on order of priority?
What's interesting about that, too, is because you're right, the immigration issue is more of a social issue for the Republicans. But the affordable housing, 40%, 39%, 34%, number three, solid for all three groups. Is that common ground? If you were advising candidates, is that the common ground and the common theme?
Well, and that's just it. Like, not only inflation, I think, is one, but affordable housing, absolutely. But the difference is you've heard a lot about inflation this cycle or this election. However, you've seen very few, if any, talk about affordable housing. You've seen it a little bit on the presidential end. You've seen Harris kind of roll out some items, but a lot of it has been mainly on housing purchases, but they also haven't been talking much about renters, so like multi-housing, et cetera.
The extreme heat in Arizona, one last thing, we've been hearing a lot from the Democrats about climate change. Big issue for them.
Yeah, for them.
But the independents, it doesn't seem like it's resonating. 17, you don't expect it from the Republicans.
You don't expect it from Republicans.
But even with independents, we're talking 17%. What does that tell you?
It tells you that it's more of a base issue. So when you look at, okay, if you're running in a Democratic primary, great. Yeah, you want to talk about climate change. That's up there an issue priority. However, once you pivot over to the general election, because that team is already sticking with you, so you got to get those folks in the middle. I mean, you're going to talk to them that's number 8 on their priority list, or do you want to talk of something in their top 4?
All right. So before we wrap this up, let's take one last look at something here. The next slide, I want to talk about what's happening with this. Top issues facing Arizona. Look at this across the board with the jumps in parties.
Yeah, no, so like when you look here, so there's two different bars here. So the lighter bar is basically top issue. So if you can only pick one, but I think realistically, most people just don't have one issue. They say, immigration, abortion, and like they have a kind of their top set of issues. So the darker bars are your top 3 over here. And you look at inflation is hands down number 1, immigration 2, housing affordability 3, abortion 4. But you have 2 pocketbook issues and then 2 social issues, which those social issues are kind of driven more so by the red or blue team.
So it's the pocketbook thing that if you're really now trying to get the most bang for your buck, that's what you're talking about.
And this is how we know this. So healthcare is actually number 5 issue. We've drilled down to figure out why that is. 70% of respondents said it's the cost of healthcare. So again, it's just that pain point in the pocketbook.
Cost.
Yeah, you've seen this theme.
He always breaks it down and he does such a great job. It's Mike Noble. Thanks again, Mike.
Hey, thank you.
Coming up, she won the most competitive election in Arizona's primaries by just 36 votes in a recount. CD3 Democratic candidate Yasamin Ansari joins us next. This is Before You Vote. Welcome back to Before You Vote. Continuing our conversations with congressional candidate CD3, Democrat Yasamin Ansari. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to finally meet you.
You as well.
Let's talk about the district, and let's start with your campaign with qualifications. What is it that you think qualifies you? Why run for the district where you're really popular in the seat that you're in, or in what you're doing now?
I think I bring, a good combination of both international experience working at the United Nations. I served as a senior policy advisor to the UN Secretary General, both the former one and the current one. So I have a background in climate policy and sustainability. But I also was a Phoenix City Councilwoman and vice mayor of the city. So bring very hyper-local knowledge on everything from addressing homelessness to public safety to niche issues like parks and roads in our community. So I think I am best served with that coupling of experience to be the next congresswoman for this community.
So I think that's a great place to go then. Take what you did at the city and what you're doing locally, but then how do you take that knowledge and how does it influence you in what you do in Congress if you win there?
Yeah, I think that, having served this city and being, Phoenix being the 5th largest and fastest growing city in the country, there's no better experience than knowing our biggest issues. Through my primary campaign, my team and I knocked on over 165,000 doors in this community. I've obviously been very active over the last 4 years as a councilwoman, so I know what people are concerned with. It's our housing crisis, housing affordability, rent and home prices going up significantly. We know that we have a rise in homelessness. We know that people are concerned about extreme heat. So having that experience and really seeing how the city of Phoenix can benefit from federal funding and having a strong member of Congress in this seat, I'm very excited to work with my friends and my colleagues at the city to continue serving this district and this community. So many of the same issues are what I hope to work on when I'm elected.
The difference being, and this is the key I've been asking all the candidates on both sides of the aisle in all the districts, is you're in such a massive body in the House of Representatives.
Right.
And so it takes building a consensus.
Yes.
And it seems as politically divided as we are, even within political parties, how do you get that consensus to get things done?
Again, I think city experience is really helpful in that because we learn to work together in a nonpartisan way. When I was on the city council, I often worked with my Republican colleagues on issues like raising wages for working people, on building new homeless shelters, on funding our police department. So, I am a Democrat. I'm, a very proud Democrat, but I am someone that wants to work with people no matter what side of the political spectrum they're on, if we can come to consensus on issues. So if I can work with my counterparts in Congress, regardless of ideology, on making housing more affordable, making healthcare more affordable, making sure that working people in this district are treated well and have good economic opportunities, I'm more than happy to do that.
So to that, you've got to be able to speak to independent voters. That's one of the nice things about the growth in independent voters is both parties have to speak with them. But the diversity of this district, you knocked on all those doors. We got about a minute left. What are some of the big issues that the members of this district across party lines think are the biggest issues in the district?
It really depends on what area of the community you're in, and I never want to, respond in broad strokes. I do think, broadly speaking, many, despite political party, are concerned with access to freedoms. Women's reproductive issues and access to bodily autonomy is huge in this district, and I think, I'm going to be someone who's always standing up for women and for, abortion access. Economic issues, I would say, are a very close second. The housing shortage in our community and people being concerned that they will not be able to have that American dream that
pay their rent
is another. And again, I think that's one that we've seen bipartisan work at the state legislature on that issue. I think we can see it in Congress, and these are the issues that I'm talking about. And whether I'm in downtown Phoenix, South Phoenix, Maryville, Glendale, I really want to hear the concerns of my constituents, hopefully in Congress next year, and make sure that I'm advocating for them in the best way possible.
Well, I know it was a tough primary, so congratulations on the primary win, and I wish you the best in the general, and I hope we get to talk again.
Thank you, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Be an informed voter, and this is just one piece of this. Go learn more about the candidates, go to their website, do your homework, reach out and be in contact. In the end, your vote is going to matter the most, and make sure you're an informed voter. We'll be back. Thank you to all of our guests for joining us on the show this week, and thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next Sunday right here on Before You Vote.